Hello, Student Success. This is your week 8 video. This is your very last video of our 8-week session. I know, very bittersweet. You're going to miss these videos, right? So I did open week 8 up early, so you might be watching this on Friday, October 15th, or you might have waited until the next week to start looking at week 8. Regardless of when you're watching this, week 8 is done on Friday, October 22nd. So I wrap up my first 8 weeks on Friday the 22nd because my second 8 weeks classes start on the 25th. So I need to make sure that first 8 weeks are all wrapped up. So this is week 8. This is the very end of our 8-week session together. So just as a last reminder, if you're not already tired of hearing of this, oops, let me click into lessons here. Your student services workshop is due. Okay, so we are going to, it's probably going to time me out again. Oh no. We're going to take one last look. Depending on when you're watching this video, you may only have a couple options left because of when our semester ends. So we have an October 19th session coming up, an October 20th session, an October 21st session. So that's it, guys. Really, we're down to just the last few. I might have missed one in there, or depending on if you're working through that Leadership Academy, but you need to get these workshops done. Like I said, a good handful of you have, but there's still quite a big chunk of you who have not. So when you take your workshop, you attend your workshop, you'll go in to the organization page over here, and you'll take the survey and you'll get that certificate, and that's what you'll upload in that Dropbox. All right, so week 1 was reopened back in week 6. Week 2 was reopened, depending on when you're watching, it might be right now, but I opened up week 2 toward the end of week 7. Week 3, I am opening up on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of week 8. So that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of week 8 is when you're going to see week 3 reopen. That means the 18th, 19th, 20th. And I'll have that scheduled here shortly. It's not there yet, but I will have it scheduled for Monday the 18th through Wednesday the 20th if anyone needs to go back in. And if you recall, week 3 had a lot of points in here, a lot. There was one that was worth 30 points on its own. So that is a great opportunity for anyone who may need to make up some points. If you missed that week for whatever reason, I know I've seen multiple people in week 1 already making up those points, and then week 2 I'm hoping to see people take advantage, and then hopefully week 3 you will as well. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down, and we're going to kick off our very last video. Week 8 is connected to 2 chapters, chapter 3, Thinking About Thought, and chapter 9, The Social World of College. So in the materials folder, as always, you kind of have your link to your textbooks, and then the slides for chapter 3 I don't really use. If you want to pull them up, you can. It's a Prezi presentation. If you're familiar with Prezi at all, you can go through it, and there's also, like, you can kind of click around. For our purposes, I'm just going to kind of scroll through the chapters as they are in our textbook. So chapter 3, Thinking About Thought, is all about metacognition. And so just being aware of who you are as a thinker. So there's, as always, kind of those beginning of the semester goals and where you want to go. So the chapter starts to talk about how, you really need to know who you are and to be able to know what works best for you. And so thinking about different types of thinking, we have Bloom's taxonomy. This is maybe a familiar concept already, depending on other classes you may have taken, or if your teachers have referred to this in the past. So Bloom's taxonomy is just a different way of listing how to know. So what I mean by that is we know things because we can remember and recall it. Multiple choice quizzes, for instance, rely on this a lot. We have to understand things. We have to be able to not only know it, but then we understand it. Take it a step further, we then apply it, analyze it, evaluate, and then according to Bloom, the highest level is creating. So taking all this information and putting it into a new product of some sort. It's the highest level. Now, depending on the task, a quiz, a project, a paper, you might be doing multiple of these things. You might only be doing 1 or 2, but this is what Bloom has said. And you can see in this section over here, it's like the verbs or the expectations that you're doing within each of these. Okay? So this is just letting you know, this is going through How often do you use all of these different Bloom's taxonomy's levels of knowing? And those are more verbs that are connected to the levels of knowing there. There's also critical thinking. So critical thinking is, I think, more important than ever right now because we have access to so much information that we have to be able to really look at it and decide, quality, credibility, reliability, not just take things for surface level. So this section talks about, the critical thinking process and understanding, is there a problem or an issue? For instance, if you have like a position paper in one of your classes, what is the issue that you're looking at? What are different options or different points of view or sides? What do you know about those? Looking at your information, again, this is where it gets really important, is knowing how to evaluate different points of views without letting your own biases peek in. And back in the digital library lesson you guys recently did, that lesson in the library itself does talk about the importance of evaluating and how to go through the process of evaluating information and really making sure that the information you get, whether it's online or otherwise, is quality information. And also knowing about things called fallacies, things that are going to weaken arguments. So making sure that when you read something, someone's not generalizing. If something says, here's an example right here, engineering students are nerds. So that is generalizing that every engineering student is a nerd. Well, we can't know every engineering student everywhere. So that's what's called a generalization. There's other things called like false causes or personalizations, where you are kind of knocking someone for a personal issue when it doesn't necessarily, if you're looking at their like political stance or whatever the case might be. So there's lots of different fallacies that might go into looking at sources and how reliable and credible something is. So this goes more into depth about that critical thinking process. And here are some different tips for critical thinking. Again, if you're looking at especially information online, since anyone can go online and create web pages or tweak web pages for the most part, you want to look for this kind of information. What is the source? Keep an open mind with it. Look for kind of evidence. Where was this created? Why was it created? What was the purpose? So taking all of this into account is going to help you become a better critical thinker. And this specifically talks about online sources because you want to look to see the domains, is it .edu? Is it .com? Is it .net? So looking to see the different types of URLs is important as well because that gives you a big clue in as to potentially how reliable that information is. Now, we critically think, but then we also creatively think. So creative thinking is sometimes just as important, if not more important, depending on the context, to be able to think outside the box, because depending on what field you're in, you might have to be constantly thinking of new or innovative ideas or ways to do things differently or more effectively. And so that's where creative thinking comes into play, looking at things from a new perspective. And some people think that, oh, I'm just not creative. Well, that's not true. Like, there are ways to help be creative. And that's what this section goes into, like tips for creative thinking. Reading, looking at different sources, look at not just for the one right answer, but look for multiple right answers. Look at how you used to do things and new ways of doing things. Think in metaphors and always ask questions. So this section goes into more depth about how to develop your creative thinking. And then this last part of the kind of thinking about thought, if you will, is decision making, problem solving and decision making. And I would venture to say that we make decisions or solve problems every single day, possibly every single hour of our lives. Some of them are very, very small problems or very small issues, decisions. What are we going to have for lunch? Obviously, that's still a decision. It might not be a huge one. Unless you're in a relationship and, you can never decide what to eat. Anyways, so, looking through, and these are kind of the steps that can help guide you through the decision-making process. And so maybe when you decide to come to Stark State, you had to define the problem. Well, I want to get an education and I have, 4 options, 4 different institutions. Narrow it down, maybe look to see, all of the different possibilities, possible solutions. Look to see, what kind of problems or advantages do each of these institutions generate, pros and cons, and then you can start to try to make a decision as you go through and then reflect on that decision. What if I had to make the decision again, did I make the right one? How could I change my process for, in the future? So this all goes through kind of that decision making. All right, so that is the gist of chapter 3. And again, I always encourage you, please look at it in depth, especially if you feel like, oh, you know what, I really could sharpen my critical thinking skills, or I'm not that creative. I want to take a look at that section. So I encourage you to take a look there. Chapter 9 is the social world of college. So this talks about, kind of just what it sounds like, that social aspect. So not necessarily the academic aspect, but oftentimes the social aspect will blend with the academics. Now, we are not a dormitory type campus. Obviously, we are a community college, so we don't have that, living arrangement to think about, but we still have to understand that we're working with people, we're learning alongside with people, and we have these social interactions with people. So we want to make sure that we know how to interact with them in a way that's going to be productive. And so chapter 9 will go about talking, how important it is to have good relationships with peers. If you happen to have a trouble with making new friends, these are some tips. Maybe you are a little shy. We have an administrator on campus, wonderful, wonderful man, but he will tell you that in college, there's no room to be shy, because eventually you graduate and you want to get a job. And in your job interview, you can't tell the employer, I'm sorry, I can't answer your question, I'm too shy, because you're not going to get that job, right? So he tries to really challenge his students and the people who come into his office to try to get over that. And college really is the best time and place to do that if you feel like you're in your shell a little bit. So communication skills, making sure that you kind of practice not only your verbal communication, but also your nonverbals, your tone, your body language, your facial expressions. I think the last year and a half or so, we haven't had to worry about it quite as much because we've had masks kind of covering up some of our facial expressions. So we have to maybe retrain ourselves for that purpose. So these are other communication kind of tips, talk less, listen more, ask questions, pay attention to your and the other person's body language. Some other listening skills, be honest, try not to be sarcastic unless you know the person really well, because that's easily misunderstood, especially if you're communicating, electronically. Again, all of these really good tips if you struggle with communicating or you just need to brush up on these skills. We also talk about online social networking. So we know about kind of social networks in general, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it might be that you use. So there's a lot of those. However, they can be used for actual networking, not just social networking, but also for actual networking. Especially I've had students who they're in the field of photography, and so they use their Instagram page for displays of their photography, and that's how they get jobs. So not only do they use it to stay connected with friends, but they also use it to promote their business. So there is a chance for an overlap there. So if social networking is a potential for you to also network for yourself professionally, you can definitely do that. And this talks about some tips on how you can do that. If you are finding struggle, hopefully we're about halfway through this full semester. You might be finding the balance at this point, but if you are still struggling with that, here are some other tips on how to balance. We don't have Greek life here on campus, but you might still have some conflict issues with students or classmates or fellow employees, whatever the case might be. So conflict resolution might be helpful for you to look a little bit more into. Again, we don't have roommates, although you might have roommates, even if it's your own kids. So, maybe that might be helpful to kind of look and see. I think I do this as a parent all the time. Anticipate problems before they happen. Like, what can my kids do today that is going to cause me an issue tomorrow? So that could apply to many different situations. Here are some harassment issues, and we do have, places on campus to help with this. Our Title IX coordinator, our behavioral team, things like that. So if there is a harassment issue on campus, that is something that you can, come to me, come to an administrator for. And then we also have, living with diversity. Obviously, we have a very diverse society, and our college reflects that nicely. We have a lot of diversity on our campus. But diversity doesn't always necessarily mean what you might think it mean right away. Some people think diversity, race and ethnicity. And that's not always the only way we can be diverse. Hopefully you know that there's more diversity than that, because we have diversity of educational backgrounds. We have different socioeconomic backgrounds, genders, age, orientations, religion. Look at this list. so many things that we can be, have in a diverse classroom. And so this section talks about the benefits of diversity and how really this is going to help you if you're exposed to this diversity now, how that can help you in the future. Some of us may have come from very diverse high schools, some of us may not. And so going into the college classroom might be the first time you're really being exposed to a lot of this different type of diversity. So this is the benefits of being exposed to that diversity, what multiculturalism is, and how you can accept and celebrate diversity. So again, there's lots of information on that there. And then this next section talks about campus groups. So we do have a lot of groups on campus. I'm just going to real quick show you. Over on the Stark State homepage, if you go for info for current students, we have a whole list of student clubs right here. Lots of different ways to get involved. And you can see that there are some that are just for fun, some that are connected to particular majors. All of them look good on a resume. Some of them will help you network. Some of them you'll be required to take part in depending on your program plan. But it's just nice to know that, like, hey, there's actually a lot going on our campus. Even though we are a commuter campus, it's really helpful to know that we have a lot of those. And this section talks about, why do we want to participate? We're already busy. How can we fit anything else in? So this will kind of tell you why you should find the time. Some of the groups on campus only meet once a month. And so it's really not that big of a time commitment. So that's just a little bit more information about that. All right. And then also you'll see in the materials folder, there's a direct link to student organizations as well as multicultural affairs. All right. So we're going to talk about your 2 assignments this week. You'll see there's a third one listed there, but that's just your student success workshop. So that's technically been going on all semester. There's no discussion forum. So 100% week 8 attendance is based on completing these 2 assignments. Your student success workshop assignment does not get factored into attendance because some of you turned that in, back in like week 2 or 3. So these 2 assignments are what are used for week 8 attendance. Completion of both is 100% attendance for week 8. Completion of one is 50% attendance. All right, so here they are. There's the Dropbox down there too if you need another Dropbox. Here is chapter 3 assignment. You can see it's right here. There are 3 parts to it. Remember, chapter 3, part of it was talked about creative thinking as well as like critical thinking. So the first part is on your own. Create a list of 3 alternate uses for peanut butter, paper clips, and pen caps. So that means like on a sheet of paper or whatever, make 3 columns. Besides eating peanut butter, what can you do with it? And list off 3 alternate things you can do with peanut butter. Besides clipping paper together, what other 3 things can you use paper clips for? And then besides putting caps on pens, what other 3 things can you use pen caps for? If you come up with more than that, that's fine. But it says, create a list of 3 alternate uses for each of those. So really you're coming up with 9 because there's 3 items, 3 times 3. Anyway, part 2 says gather a group of 3 or 4 friends. So depending on where you are with, getting together with people, you can call people. Do this with a group of people who you live with. Maybe do this with another group of people that you attend a face-to-face class with, whatever the case is, whether it's in person, over the phone, over Zoom, whatever you'd like to do. Do not use your ideas from number 1, okay? And ask this group of people to create their own list together. So like you're gonna, again, maybe make a brand new column. Here's peanut butter, here's paper clips, here's pen caps, and ask them, what are some other things you could do with these 3 items? And try not to use, again, your original numbers. In fact, you're not throwing those out. If they happen to mention one of those, that's okay, but you don't want to throw your ideas that you already came up with up here out. You're looking to see what new ones the group can potentially generate. All right, and then part 3 is compare the results of your group with your own and answer these questions. Did you generate more ideas or did the group? So meaning up here, it says create a list of 3. Maybe you were able to come up with like 9, I don't know, for each particular item. Did the quality of the items or ideas improve? So maybe did you come up with some good ideas, but the group came up with some great ideas? Were the group ideas more innovative? Were they more creative? And which was more fun, creating your own list, like in part 1, or leading the group in part 2? Okay, so it'd be helpful if you want to include the lists. So when you go into chapter 3 assignment, if you want to under write submission, or you can do it in a Word document, and you can even tell me, my list. And you can tell me group, group list. And then you can answer the 3 questions underneath. That way it kind of like lets me see what did you come up with, what did the group come up with, and then you can answer those questions. Okay, so that's chapter 3 assignment. And then your last assignment is the Cultural Intelligence Survey Assessment, which goes along with chapter 9. This is one of those automatically graded assignments in Blackboard. You'll see it pop up. And you'll click through and it's going to ask you some questions. And again, it's automatically graded. So you want to make sure you check Blackboard that it doesn't say in progress, that it says, graded. That's it, guys. You have 2 assignments for week 8. Chapter 3 assignment and Cultural Intelligence Survey assessment. Turn those in by Friday, October 22nd, so that you can get your week 8 attendance, and that's when the class closes. Also, make sure to submit your Student Success Workshop assignment. If you have any questions, please let me know. And I just want to say thank you guys for a great first 8 weeks. There were a lot of you in this class, so I appreciate, if something took me a little bit longer than a day or so to grade, I appreciate your patience. And I really do hope that if this was your first online class, that it was helpful to kind of get you warmed up to taking future online classes. If you've taken online classes before, I hope you at least appreciated maybe some of the interaction with classmates. And if you guys need anything the rest of your time here at the college, don't hesitate to reach out. And I hope you have a great rest of the fall semester. Bye.